Did you know that vampires really exist? In the coastal Bulgarian village of Cemetary, on the Black Sea, you can find drinks, sun, great food, and as my wife and I found out, vampires. To my surprise, Cemetary had been home to real-world creatures of the night, and I'm going to tell you all about it. Today, we're going to explore some of the most iconic antagonists in popular culture, vampires. I'm building a community of the world's most creative people, and you're invited. Just subscribe to the channel, get your notifications, and check phantomastronaut.com for all the other ways to connect. When you think of vampires, you might conjure an image of Bela Lugosi in a cape or detached, sensual immortals, like you would find in Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire or The Hunger. Vampires have had lots of different incarnations over the centuries, and while What We Do in the Shadows pokes fun at all the different tropes associated with vampire lore, they weren't exactly entertainment to Europeans in the Middle Ages. In fact, vampires, and monsters like them, exist in the folk tales of almost all parts of the world. In Africa, the Dahomey had legends of shape-shifting flying creatures that hunted at night. India had the Batal, and Asia, the Jiangxi and Aswang. In the Mediterranean, the Greek word for vampire-like creatures is dracula, and that word derives from the ancient Bulgarian term varkolak, which initially was synonymous with werewolves, but became a reference to a specific type of flesh-eating undead ghoul. This evolution isn't unusual, because in the ancient world, what is now the modern Bulgarian coast was the Greco city-state of Thrace. So concepts cross-pollinated in the region and evolved over thousands of years. Although we think of Vlad the Impaler as the first historical vampire, that's actually a misnomer. Bram Stoker, being the great storyteller he was, looked to the brutality of the real-world Vlad as inspiration for his fictional Dracula, but there's no historical evidence connecting him with vampirism. Instead, we need to look northeast of Bulgaria to Croatia to see where myth crosses over into fact. A man named Jur Grando. Grando lived in Kringa, a small town in the interior of the Istrian Peninsula, and he died in 1656, a full 200 years before the publication of Bram Stoker's novel. According to records, however, Grando would return from the grave at night as a strigoi, or vampire, to feed on unsuspecting victims of his village, until his body was exhumed and decapitated 20 years later, in 1672. This is the first named person that history records as a vampire. And this brings us back to Cemetary. We were staying in Sofia, where my wife was working on a film, when the news began reporting on a strange discovery. Archaeologists had unearthed the graves of real vampires. We, along with a group of friends, set out on a road trip to see this peculiar find. What we discovered were two 700-year-old skeletons with iron stakes driven through their hearts, just like a scene out of a well-crafted horror movie. From the Smithsonian, as recently as a century ago, Balkan peoples held that the belief that staking down the corpses of people who they regarded as evil would prevent them from rising from the dead and continuing to torment the living. A group of brave men would reopen their graves and pierce the corpse with iron or wooden rods. Archaeologist and museum director Basadar Dimitrov told journalists gathered around the skeleton, which he said was probably that of a notorious Black Sea pirate named Krivich or Crooked. Similar finds have been unearthed in places like Italy. Sometimes a brick was placed in the mouth or limbs were segmented, but the burial rituals are all recognizable as indicative of vampiric superstition. There's a belief that outbreaks of diseases like the Black Death increased fear of undead ghouls and spurred fearful people into action. When the body dies, the gums recede, and this may have added oversized canines to the legend of vampires. This all goes to show that the line between myth and history is sometimes a little blurry. What local folklore have you discovered? Tell me in the comments. And as always, like, subscribe, and turn on alerts. Check the description for more information and to learn how you can support the channel. I'm Phantom Astronaut, and I'll see you out there.